Welcome to Green Carpet Interviews. Let's get into the show.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Green Carpet Interviews, the show where we talk about veganism, the environment, and all things green. My name is Deji Bankole.
And I'm Akindele Bankole.
We are your hosts for this show, and welcome. Thanks for coming. Thanks for listening. Today we have two pretty interesting people, Ed and Natasha. Ed is a professional chef who has been to culinary college and worked in high-end kitchens in the UK and Australia, New Zealand, as well as Canada. But now he's specializing in making naturally leavened sourdough. Natasha is an English teacher turned bakery manager, animal rights advocate, and co-founder of BReD, organic sourdough. They're doing this together, and it's pretty awesome. They also have a book coming out, but I'll let them explain all about that. I'm looking forward to this because I have tried to make bread myself, and I failed horribly. So maybe they'll be able to show us or tell us, what to do in order to not be, bread failures.
I love that. That's great.
Okay, well, without further ado, let's bring them in, and we'll see what the deal is. How do we make good bread? Hello.
Hello.
Hi guys, how are you?
Oh, we're doing so well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Awesome. So nice to
Welcome to
meet
the
you guys.
show.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
So, for those people who don't know who you are, why don't you explain, who you are and what you guys do?
What you're all about. My name's Ed, and it's my wife Natasha. We've been together for 20 years, traveled the world together, and now we live in Whistler, BC, and run a 100% sourdough vegan bakery.
Wow.
Just kind of unusual because bakeries are known to use a lot of animal products, eggs, butter, cream, things like that. So we're proud to call ourselves vegan and pretty proud of our bakery.
That's awesome. When did you guys start the bakery?
The bakery physically, the brick and mortar opened in March 2019, pretty much a week before the pandemic, a year later. But
you're right in time to to catch the full brunt of it, huh?
Exactly.
It was so sad because we had a big party planned and all the staff were really looking forward to it, and then what actually happened was we laid them all off and they went home.
Oh
wow, that was a very, very surprising party gift.
Yeah,
everyone's
exactly.
Fired.
Yeah,
but prior to that, actually, BReD as a business, we started in February 2016. Just as a very small, I have, like you said, a chef background, fine dining chef background. So started by renting the kitchen where I was working as sous chef on Wednesday mornings, and I would make the bread for a very small group of friends and the yoga community. We were quite into yoga, so it started. The first week was 30 loaves of bread.
Wow.
Make that Wednesday. Sourdough goes in the fridge overnight to slowly ferment. I would come back in the following day and bake all the bread fresh, and people would come in and pick it up. And it just grew from there. Word of mouth is very strong, especially in a small town like Whistler, especially between sort of, families and things like that. And before we knew it, I was baking 150 loaves once a week using the same
amazing.
That's a lot. Awesome. It's a lot of loaves.
It was a big side hustle.
It was a big side hustle.
Yeah.
And you can only mix 12 breads at a time in the mixer that I was using. So I learned a lot. It was a steep learning curve, but it was very grassroots. We didn't have to invest a lot of money to see, did people want this in the community?
But it was never like a set out business plan. It was really liked making bread. He suggested a restaurant because the restaurant used to buy it in. And then he started experimenting with different grains, different recipes, and giving it to friends. And we'd go to these yoga classes all the time. So he'd bring a loaf, to our yoga teacher, Tina, in our Ashtanga yoga studio. And then all the other yogis would smell it because the whole room would smell of this bread. And then, that smells pretty good. Like, bring a loaf of that. And then people were saying, we would buy a loaf if we could get one. It smells good. And Tina would tell everyone how great it was. And so that's how it kind of, I loved it because it's kind of like such a kind of organic journey into this. And then it was like, okay, like I can try making some bread. So I rent the kitchen maybe. And then it was like the customers started telling other people. And then before you know it, it's like people you don't know all over town showing up every week and then going, oh, I couldn't get bread this week because you can't make enough. Like, I think you need to like take this further now. Like, when are you going to open a bakery? And
wow,
like, bakery, okay, yeah. And then Ed and I are like, we could open a bakery, but like, obviously it's going to have to be vegan because we're vegan.
Yeah.
But then they're all telling us to do it, so I guess they'll buy our stuff anyway. So
you just reminded me, actually, I'd actually forgotten about this, but as it was growing, I was doing all the one bread. And they were always in tins because they were relatively small convection ovens. And I remember getting so many orders that I had to start doing freeform loaves. You normally these improving baskets, but I didn't have enough proving baskets. So I had to use the bowls, like the soup bowls that we had at the restaurant. And then I remember the chefs in the evening being like, where have all the bowls gone? They're lined with like tea towels and things like that with all the bread in.
That's funny.
I was just thinking on my feet.
And it was about that point that the restaurant were like, this is kind of getting out of hand now. Like, don't think we can carry on doing this anymore. And then that was also that was really painful to be told that like we were going to have to put it down. But it was also the push we needed to say, right, well, not at the restaurant anymore. So where? What's next? And
awesome.
It took us a couple years to get it fully off the ground from that point.
Do you feel?
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, it's always wonderful to hear business owners actually, at least from my experience, is that business owners are a little bit more straightforward in the sense that they tell you, sorry, you can't make your dough in our soup bowls. Sorry. Maybe it's time for you to move on, and you go, it's painful to hear, but oh, maybe this is the right push I need to go do what I need to do. And you look back and you go, I'm so thankful that they actually told us to stop.
Exactly.
Exactly. No, nothing personal here. It's so beautiful. I really like that.
Yeah, they were really supportive, actually. I was very lucky. It was a farm-to-table restaurant. It wasn't a vegan restaurant, but they were very supportive through the whole thing. And another example of that was in the beginning to really help us out. It was rent was just charged as a percentage of what I would sell. But then he was like, if I give you after 6 months, he was like, now I'm just going to give it fixed rent. So if you only make 50 loaves, you have to still pay the same rent. So it was pushing me to make more bread because then it was that set amount, there was more money in my pocket. So he was the business owner was giving me these little lessons in sort of what it would be like once if we did open a brick and mortar.
That's awesome.
Do you feel like if you would have just opened a brick and mortar first, if you would have been as successful?
I'm not sure, because we really had the backing, like Natasha said. The community were asking us. They were like, we don't want this just once a week. And it was, like I said, only one bread. So it was like, I'd make a sesame sourdough, or I'd make a walnut and raisin sourdough. And I noticed the weeks that it was fruit and nut, it wasn't as popular, or certain customers were only buying one loaf instead of 3 loaves because, with a savory sesame loaf or a whole grain loaf, you can use it for multiple different purposes. Whereas a walnut and raisin, they're like, that's great for breakfast. So it was market research for us as well.
Yeah.
It was kind of testing the waters to see, when we do open a bakery and we have 10 or 15 breads available, what ones will be the more popular. And so it was almost like having a farmer's market stall, but it was much easier because I didn't have to move all the bread around. The equipment was there. I knew the kitchen. So I think it really helped us in many ways, not just get a brand awareness within the community, but also find out what items people would want to buy.
Also, when we opened, we didn't know anything about really like running a full operation of a business, and like the human resources that are needed, the marketing and all of that, how to generate sales, email marketing, all these things, like e-commerce, all these things we've added to our business in the last 5 years have been a huge learning journey for us. But like now I see when other businesses open, they invite all the media and they have like a soft launch, and it's all really kind of organized. We didn't know anything, so we didn't invite any media to our opening. Nobody about it except for the people that had been buying bread from us 2 years prior to our opening. So I think we actually did have a lineup, and we did sell out very quickly on our first day, and that was all because we generated a community of dedicated followers before we opened. Had we not have done that, nobody would have been there. Nobody would have known who we were, what we were doing. We would have run out of business, because by the time people had heard about us, we probably would have run out of money. So I think the community have definitely been key in our success, and listening to them. And there's a saying, ignore your customers and they'll go away, or something. And so you have to keep listening to what people want. So when they say we want bread and we want it like this and we want it like that, you kind of have to listen. And if you hear it enough times, then you act on it. But if you just gung-ho go, I've got a concept, I'm going to put it here and do this, how do you know people are going to buy into it? How do you know people?
I think that that's very important, because I think a lot of times entrepreneurs go in with just what they think is going to be good, and without doing that market research, and then they have to like sort of learn that later, after they've already got it and they've already got the expense of, the overhead of having a brick and mortar place. And now that there's no one there, they're like, okay, well, how do I get people here? Where like you guys did, I think you guys did it the right way, because you only did it because there was a demand for it. Because if no one was asking you for it, there's no reason you would have ever done it. So I think that's probably the best way that you could have done it.
If we could go back in time, we probably would invite media. That seems to be a better option than not telling anyone.
And maybe you've done a soft opening, just to practice a little bit.
A practice run before you go live, because you do, and we did actually have some negative reviews on opening day because we didn't know what we were doing. We hadn't rehearsed it. We literally finished construction and went, okay, let's open. Here we are. It was quite, we had no money in the bank by then because we'd spent it all on so it was a really kind of cowboy opening, but we can laugh about it now. We've learned a lot, so
that's true.
We had to make dough in many ways. The money, the dough, and
no, I like this story because I think probably majority of business owners probably have the similar stories. Like we go in thinking we know what we're doing, and we have no clue.
No,
but I think that naivete is what actually helps us get there, because if we know what's ahead of us, most of us will not do it.
Totally.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's the ignorance is so important for us to get started, and with a nice ego to go with it. to say, of course I can do all of this. This is amazing. Me, I know it all. And you just get started, and then of course, then reality hits, and then you have to go all through these struggles. But if it's something that one is going to do, regardless of the struggles, one would overcome it. And I think that's what it is, at least for me, my experience, is that going in, not knowing, not having a real clue of what I'm going to really do, got me there, because I had the impression, I had a false belief that I knew what I was going to do. Right. But it was good. At the end of the day, I see that, I might not have done it.
And how long has your restaurant been in Santa Cruz?
6 years.
Oh, yeah. So quite similar to us then. So 2018, you guys opened.
Yeah. 2017.
Yeah.
2016, right?
Yeah.
Wow. So I'm just thinking, like, what are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned since you've had the place? Like, what would you say is like one of the biggest lessons you've learned?
For me personally, it's like learning, well, one really big thing is learning about the profit first bookkeeping cash flow system. Because what I learned is you don't know if your bookkeeper or accountant are good or bad until they're bad. And you can get recommendations and things, but every business is different. Like a food and beverage business, our profit margins in the industry generally are really low. Like they say quite often, if a food and beverage business is making 5% profit, they're doing okay. And it's really tragic, a lot of food and beverage businesses are barely breaking even, and we know this because a lot of them go under. And we had so many naysayers in the beginning telling us it was a bad idea to open. I mean, they didn't even know that we were vegan at the time. They knew that we were opening a bakery, but people were telling us it wasn't going to work, that the location was wrong. What were we doing? We had so much negativity, and we just had to stick with our guns because we saw an opportunity and we had to believe in it. And so you get recommendations, you hear these statistics, and you've really got to do your homework and learn what's going to work best for your business. And profit first cash flow system was really integral to us turning our business around and making sure we had the right team in place to help us with our financials and make sure that we were profitable, but to become a B Corp company. And that certification also gave us a lot of insight into what it meant to be a good employer, take care of your people, have an impact on the environment and social issues as well. So we've had huge learning in those areas.
I would say for myself, I totally agree with everything Natasha said. Like, if you're not making money, you're not going to survive. But I've worked hard. I grew up, working in fine dining kitchens and always worked long hours and embrace that. I like making everything from scratch, and being proud of what you produce. But I never realized how much we would work as entrepreneurs, as business owners. I think if you're starting a business and you're not prepared to put in the hours, you basically have to love what you're doing. Like, people say that, like, we see, even though we're open 5 days a week, we're working those other 2 days, either preparing the sourdough, it's such a long process, or doing admin or everything else that's involved, in running a small business. Unfortunately, we don't have, lots of managers and supervisors and things like that we can, offload the work to. So it was definitely a shock in that first couple of years of, wow, this is really all consuming.
Yes, it's beautiful. Is there anything in because I think a lot of business owners are driven, and I imagine that you guys are definitely driven, to have to push through all of the headaches that comes with owning a business. And is there anything in your youth or when you were growing up that you think was the catalyst to your having this type of drive?
For me personally, I know instantly it's from my dad, because my dad was a business owner, small business owner. And I saw how much he worked to provide for his family. He wasn't there as much as he wanted, but what he put food on the table for us. And my mum was able to work. She was a teacher, so she took 11 years off to bring up our kids. I'm one of 4. Eventually she went back to work as soon as she could, pretty much, to teaching. But I think it was that drive that I saw from my dad, and that's come through because both my brothers own their own businesses as well, which are very successful in the UK. So it has to be from him, because he's got 3 sons that own their own businesses.
That's awesome. Wow.
That's awesome.
My story is quite different to Ed's. We had very diverse upbringings. Ed lived in a big house in the countryside with his lovely family, and his dad was a business owner. My upbringing was in a council flat in southeast London, in a very rough area. What Americans would call a ghetto, I suppose. And I didn't have a father. My mother had severe mental health problems, so I was actually taken away from her when I was 8, and I grew up mainly in foster care after that. And that comes with a whole load of weight to it, in the sense that statistically, children that grow up in foster care, just to put it in perspective, less than 1% go on to university education. And we're actually statistically far more likely to have a few different career paths ahead of us: in prison, on the streets, on drugs, or teenage pregnancy, all those social problems, that they tend to be our future. And I was very headstrong as a kid that was not me. When I was told things like I might have to live in a children's home because I was getting older and they needed the foster family placements for younger children, I was like, no way am I living in a children's home, because I knew that the kids that lived in the children's homes tended to have more drug problems and not attend school. And I knew that I wanted to attend school, so I needed to be in a supportive family environment where I would be able to get homework done. And so all my life I got kind of told that I wasn't going to finish school, that I was destined for this, that and the other. The social workers tried to give me an apartment when I was 16 and move me out of this foster placement where I was secure and able to do homework. They were pushing to take my own apartment, and that would have been financially devastating for me at 16, having to manage bills, rent. And they did a carrot on a stick to me. They said, we're going to give you £1,000 to furnish your own apartment. And, you know, you can imagine 16-year-olds with nothing thinking, oh, £1,000, you know.
Wow.
We all know that doesn't take you anywhere. You can barely buy a couch for £1,000.
Wow.
So, you know, they're really trying to push me, but I was strong enough to say, no, I'm not moving into my own apartment. How am I going to get to university? How will I be able to save up money to afford my education if I have to pay rent? And they didn't have an answer for that. So they had to basically keep me in the foster placement until I was 18. And so for me, I've always had to hear these naysayers and firmly believe that I'm not going to be the person that you've shaped me to be. I've got my own destiny ahead of me. I know where I'm going, and it's not your way, you know. So I think that although we've got opposite upbringings, I think that there's a lot of synergy in our sort of drive, determination, and hard work ethic.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think she's glamorized it a little bit. It wasn't a fancy house in the countryside, you know, worn carpets, and, you know, we'd eat like baked beans from the can.
Oh.
Like, I had it hard as well.
However, Natasha, I have to say that no, it's really a fascinating story, because I mean, to defy the statistics, but you'd have to know that at a young age, and you knew that. Because I think it's almost the statistics is almost a natural, you know, trajectory, that because the system just pushes the kids there as though it's natural to have the kids there, but you'd have to defy that. That's amazing to me.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. I remember being like, one time I'd had a lot of absence from school because I was in and out of care. I wasn't in care the whole time from age 8 to 18. It was in and out because my mum would be sectioned in a mental institution, and I would go into care, and then she would come out and I would go back to her. And there was all this kind of like, then she'd get ill again, I'd go back into care. So I lived with a lot of different families, and went back to her at different periods. And when I was 13, I was living with her, and she actually got this, her mental illness was so bad that she thought that social workers and police were almost like the enemy, and we had to run away from them. So there were periods when we were sleeping on the streets, or she kept me locked up in the house. I wasn't even allowed to look out the window in case there were social workers out there, because people would notice that I was absent from school. And eventually I had to run away from her, and I put myself back in care because it got out of control. But that year I only attended school for 30 days. And so what they did is the school moved me into the lowest set for all of my subjects. So they had this set system where they put the high performers in set 1 and the low performers in set 8 and everything else in between. And they automatically put me in set 8 for my final 2 years of school, which meant I was in a class with people that were not academically minded at all, perhaps had special needs and things. And it was really frustrating because I was actually quite capable. I was able to do all the assignments that they gave us, and I always had to put my hand up to answer teachers' questions, but they basically told me that I was going to fail. So I had to be in this group because I didn't have any, history of assessments or anything in my previous years. And so I had to do that. Just before I finished school, they said to me, instead of taking the lower paper where you can only get a grade C as the highest grade, we're going to let you take the higher paper and you might be able to get a C on that paper. I came out with an A in English and I'd never got an A the whole time I'd been at school. I'd never got higher than a C. So it was like things like that. And the way I did it is I got all the books from the people that are in the top set and I copied all their notes. And so I was like, no, I'm not listening. I'm not a C grade student. And I came out with an A and I was like, so mad with the school for keeping me down. So I left the school and went and did a couple more years at a different college to get the exams I needed for university.
Wow, that's amazing.
Thank you.
No, really, I mean, the fact that you can navigate through all of that and to first of all, just logically in your mind, navigate through what you need through all the noise, you know, and then figure out how you need to move ahead, that's just a beautiful story.
The way you talk about your mom, she was very headstrong. She was very strict, but I feel like the time that you did have, she was,
Before she got really ill, when I was 7, she'd spent a lot of time teaching me to read and write as a young child. So when I went to school, I could already read and write, whereas the kids in my class were learning that for the first time. So I feel like that those beginning years with my mother as a well person, that really gave me the foundation to go on in life, to achieve things I wanted to achieve and not listen to people that didn't know me, that had been making decisions for me for my future. And I feel like that's the way I've tackled everything. Like with this business with Ed, it's like you can see these horrible statistics, like I said, of food and beverage businesses, and a lot of them during the pandemic went out of business overnight because they were just like, we've been struggling for so long, why bother struggling through this? Let's just call it, call it a day.
Right.
For us, it was like, oh, this is our first year in business.
Yeah, we got 4 more years.
It's like you were thrown on an island and the boat sank. And now you have no choice, you have to survive. Totally. I like it.
So I do have a question. So when did you each become vegan?
Natasha was a couple of years before me.
I went vegan in 2014.
So and about a year. We've always eaten Natasha's mostly been vegetarian all her life. So we always ate a heavy vegetarian diet previously to going vegan. And I was always happy to do that. You feel better with the more vegetables and fruits that you eat. So
and what made you sort of make that full transition over to being fully vegan?
So I think when somebody goes vegan, it's rarely one situation or thing. I think it's a series of events, and you may not realize them at the time. But I think one of the first things for me was watching a documentary in England, probably around 2012. And it wasn't a vegan documentary at all. It was a guy called Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall. Is that his name? And he celebrity chef, and he's very kind of farm to table, growing your own food and using all the produce and all the parts of the animal. Very kind of like off the land, using it all. Kind of in that way, it was seen as like very organic. And he did this documentary about factory farming, and I wasn't aware of what a factory farm was. And he showed all these chickens in cages, And he was trying to encourage people to have their own animals, and got these families to look after pigs and chickens, and with the idea that they were actually going to eventually butcher them. And it was quite interesting because half the families, the kids got really attached. Well, all the people in the family got really attached to the animals, and some of them didn't want to kill them at the end. As you can imagine, they had names for them, and they'd kind of seeing them as an equal being, like a pet, or even on a human level. And some of the families did manage to go through with slaughtering them, but what I found most shocking was seeing the animals kept in these factory farms, and what he was trying to prevent and say to people, like, don't support this terrible animal agriculture, do it this more ethical way. And at the time I was just like, wow, like I don't want to buy that caged stuff. So I was buying like free ranged eggs and stuff like that, thinking that I was doing something better. And then a few years later, I found myself in Whistler in a ski resort in British Columbia, working as first cook in a ski school kitchen, serving 800 ski instructors and kids lunch every day. And the food was really low quality because the budget was, well, like a couple dollars a day, basically, per child. And I'd never cooked meat before. And there were all these disgusting processed things like wieners that were made of 40% reconstituted pork. And I just started reading all the labels because I had to anyway to get the instructions for how to cook it all. But then I was also kind of like, what are these kids eating? And I didn't like it. I'd never actually signed up for this job. I thought I was working as ski school support staff and would be going around on ski lessons. I didn't know they were going to put me in the kitchen on the mountain. But at the time I was just moved over to Canada on this like year of fun adventure, and was just kind of like, yeah, I'm up for anything. Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, I'll do this. So I'm like, yeah, I'll be the cook. And suddenly I'm like, actually, I don't think this is too good what we're feeding all these children. And I noticed all the ski instructors basically ate all this food all the time because it was free. And so they all got fat, spotty and depressed. And then at the same time as this, a vegan raw salad juice bar place opened at the bottom of the mountain. And I started going there for like a cleansing green juice every day to cleanse my soul of all the disgusting food I'd been knocking out on the mountain. And so I started going to this juice bar, and I met these beautiful babes, and they were just glowing with radiance, and they were happy, positive, and I befriended them. And they were like, you know, what are you doing at the end of ski school? Because it's obviously a seasonal job. You want to come work here in the summer? And I was like, yeah, like I want to be one of these healthy, glowing babes, not one of these fat, spotty, depressed people. So it was quite selfish in the beginning. It was kind of like health and wanting to look good. And then I went on my journey, and then started watching documentaries, learning more about animal agriculture and the environment. And I think a lot of people go vegan or plant-based initially for health reasons, selfish motives, but the ones that stick at it, we get the ethics, and eventually I stay vegan for the animals, but I went vegan for health. So that's my journey. And then when I did go vegan, I basically mandated to Ed that there were no animal products allowed in the house anymore. And if he wanted to carry on living with me, this was the way it was going to be.
As you guys have, you've heard Natasha talking for a little bit now. She's pretty headstrong. So if she's no animal products in the house, that's the foot is going down.
Yeah.
No, I know. I really, it's wonderful. It's so great. And like all these different things, these are your stories, these are your stories that's shaping who you are, and the wisdom that you're getting from all your experiences that you're going through, it's just so beautiful to hear you really express it and be passionate about what you're going through and what you're not going to do. I love it. It's I can imagine it must be comedic to be 700-800 people, and you can see the result literally on people, and you and the inhumanity of it is even more, because most people are just eating what they think is there, right? and they're hoping, they're believing and depending on people to provide that food, and they just trust that whatever the food is, it must be good for them, you know. But so there's some level of inhumanity when we don't serve what's actually good for people.
Totally.
You know?
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think one of the issues I've noticed is that people are now looking at animals as simply a protein source. They literally think that cows, pigs, and chicken are protein, and that's it. That's all their purpose is. And it's like, their physiology is not that different to us. Like, we're all mammals. Like, would you look at a human and be like protein source? Because I mean, if you're looking at like that way, or a pig, like, why wouldn't you look at a human and go protein source? But that would be preposterous, right? To look at our own kind as a food source. Yet if you look at nature, animals eat other animals. Like, grizzly bears will hunt black bears and eat them. So it's like, I don't know, there's just such weird ways that we view things. Like, we love dogs in North America in a way. We love dogs. We'd never eat a dog here. And maybe, if Korean people eat dog, like, that's disgusting. But yet we eat pigs. And it's like, who made up all this crap anyway? Who decided that this animal was a pet and this animal, because they look cute? Like, I don't know. It's can't a piglet look cute, or a lamb? Aren't lambs like the cutest things in the world? Like, what kind of ass I would eat a lamb?
Yeah.
It's so true.
I totally agree.
Totally.
So you guys were vegan to begin with, and then you decided to, after a lot of coaxing from your customers, you opened up a vegan bakery. What other so one of the things I thought was kind of interesting that you talked about is that you started off with like sort of one type of bread at first, and then you sort of like kept going with that that idea. When did you decide to start to expand out a little bit in terms of like the bread selection, and then I want to talk a little bit about the book, but
yeah, totally. So once we realized, we found a place. It was in Creekside, which is the original village of Whistler. And then as Whistler grew as a township, it expanded and moved more north slightly, a few kilometers down the road. So we almost have like a village community, and we were just walking home one day. We saw this empty space and we were like, this could really work. This has been empty for 5 years previously to us opening. It was an internet cafe when they existed years and years ago. So it was a beautiful space. It's relatively small, but it has like amazing big windows, so lots of natural light. And we just knew, because we were at the bottom of a ski mountain and a premier, so lots of mountain biking, that people wouldn't just want bread. They would expect it, to have cookies and cakes. And then we decided on doing cinnamon buns. We were like, we need a sort of iconic sort of sweet item that we're known for. So we decided on sourdough cinnamon buns, which we've become pretty known for. But it was again another steep learning curve. I was like, if I had it my way, I would just make sourdough bread. But we need options for people, and it's for people to spend more money. We have really good espresso coffee that's roasted in Vancouver, so locally roasted. That's generally what Tash does. Is her role is front of house, and I run the back of house. She's very good with people. I'm very good with food. So we have our sections and roles to play within the bakery. But yeah, it's a constant learning curve, and I think that's what keeps us engaged and keeps us loving what we do. But essentially, we're mission driven. I think the thing that gets us out of bed every day is that we are vegan business owners. We couldn't profit from having a non-vegan bakery. We would, we'd just feel guilty. You have to practice what you preach. So for us, we were like, everyone eats plants, so we want everyone to be welcome at our bakery. A lot of our customers still to this day come in and can't believe that we're 100% vegan.
Or they don't even realize that we're vegan.
No, we don't.
They don't read the signs on the door or anything. They just come in and bread. And I know they know we're vegan because sometimes they buy us gifts that aren't vegan. And I'm always like, really? You've been coming here for 5 years and you didn't but God bless.
It's
It's hard to do that because you want to appreciate the gesture, but you don't want to eat the things.
Yeah,
awesome.
exactly. So what sort of like led you to decide that you wanted to embark on this new endeavor of writing a book?
Oh, we didn't decide that.
Okay.
Penguin decided that. What they
Oh.
So we won an award, a Small Business BC award,
Wow.
a few years ago, Youth Entrepreneur 2021. And around that time, we did some media interviews, and I guess one of them got heard by this Penguin editor, and Angela Magia.
Mega,
Her name's a bit difficult to pronounce, but she's lovely. And she emailed us and said, "Oh, have you thought about writing a cookbook? Penguin would love to have you write a vegan sourdough cookbook." And I remember reading this. So this was, but in the middle of the pandemic, basically, because in 2021, we were still going through waves of coronavirus and restrictions, masks. There was the vaccine rollout. It was a pretty tough time for a lot of people, and especially business owners that were expected to filter customers based on if they had vaccines, if they had masks, and all of that business. So very stressful. Amongst all of that, we had no immigrants going between countries because people were not being issued work permits. And when you have a business in a ski resort, you really rely on temporary workers coming. Here in Whistler, we get a lot of Aussies and Kiwis and Europeans especially coming to do a ski season or a year. And those are our workforce, those people. So when you shut off immigration and you say, we're not really letting people in right now, we're not handing out work permits, the businesses here don't have any staff. And the staff that we had before the pandemic were from Australia, Ireland, other places in Europe, and they all went back to their countries. So we were running a real bare bones operation. We'd borrowed a couple of people that had their hours cut from their other jobs in town, and we were kind of scrambling through it. Friends. We pulled friends in from places. We had a head chef from a barbecue restaurant come and work with us.
Wow.
Yeah, he is actually vegan. Don't ask me how he works at the barbecue restaurant. That's his.
Wow.
But we pulled him in. So we were getting random people to come help us. And then I get this email going, would you like to write a cookbook? And I actually just closed the email. First of all, I was just like, well, that's ridiculous. And it took me a couple of weeks to tell Ed, actually. And I just kind of dropped it in casually as someone was talking about something to do with cookbooks or whatever. I was just like, oh yeah, Penguin actually just kind of reached out and asked us to write a cookbook.
And it blew my mind.
Like, what? Yeah, I don't know how we've got any time for that.
It's not just any publisher, it's one of the biggest publishing houses.
Absolutely. Yes.
So right. I was like, you can't say no to that. We had all these stresses with the business.
Totally.
And you just make time. And we were just like, this is such a huge opportunity. Yeah.
Absolutely.
You pull the email out of the trash folder.
Yeah. It definitely wasn't a trash. I think it was just
we were very appreciative.
It was flagged.
It was just at that moment I couldn't see how on earth we had any. I mean, people were saying to us, do you have a book? And I was like, don't be silly, we haven't got any time for that. And then okay, we can write a book. Yeah, of course we can. And then I remember listening to some business coach saying, if you think you don't have enough time to get stuff done, just remember you've got the same amount of hours in the day as Warren Buffett and all of these, Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. It's 24 hours in a day. They got it done. You can get it done. Just get up an hour earlier. And I'm like, oh yeah, except when you have a bakery, you're actually getting up before the sun anyway. So I was like, just get up an hour earlier. How much earlier can one get up?
Just 1 more hour earlier than the one you're getting up.
Yeah, I was just going I just thought it was really unachievable and ridiculous. But then Ed made me realize that it was an opportunity that could not be missed. And
I was great. Wow.
We are really grateful for it, and we've got it done.
Congratulations. That's
Thank
awesome. Yeah. No, you know what they say too, like if you want to get anything done, ask a busy person.
Yes, I love that phrase. It's so true, isn't it?
And it's so true. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
And why is
Yeah.
that?
Because
we
a
know
busy person, you never stop. You're always looking for something to do.
Mm.
Always.
we don't procrastinate. We don't have time to procrastinate. We've got to get it done. We've got to fit it in the schedule. Things get time.
Has to go in. Yes.
Gets put in the
Yeah.
schedule. There is a schedule of things to do. Whereas
Yeah.
people perhaps very carefree and just lay on the couch, and I don't know what it's like to be one of those people, but my life is so far removed from that. But I am very grateful, because somebody told me once, well, it's a choice to be busy. And I think that can sound really painful when you first hear it, but then once you accept it, you go, yeah, I'm really grateful I'm busy.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And there's an addictive part of that as well. You know, like you just, that's, if you're not busy doing something, you like something is missing.
Mm.
You know, like where's the chaos?
Yeah.
Totally.
It was fun writing the book. We got to try out a lot of new recipes that we might not be able to do at the bakery. So there's a lot of recipes in there, like I spoke earlier, the sourdough cinnamon buns, you know, that become a real classic and a staple that people said, are they in the book? But there's a lot of other things that I wanted to put in there just for fun, that maybe I don't have enough time to do at the bakery, or we don't have a beautiful display fridge that we could put it in, or something like that. So
what are some of those? I mean, as many as you, I mean, don't give them all away, obviously, but
yeah, I mean, we don't have, because we're BReD focused, we don't have like an overhead hood extraction for doing, for example, deep frying.
Yeah.
Because so there's a really nice sourdough donut recipe in there. We're also known for our chai tea that we make. Natasha and I spent a month in India and loved drinking the really rich Indian chai. So what I did is I included that spice mix into the donuts. So it's like a chai spice donut with pumpkin puree in there as the egg replacer, and then filled with a cranberry and raspberry jam.
It's like a Thanksgiving donut.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so we've kind of taken like experiences, exactly, from traveling and sort of childhood memories and things like that, and try to. It's 100 recipes, just over 100 recipes. So there's baking in there, there's beautiful sourdough breads, but then there's cakes and cookies, things you can eat.
I'm hungry already.
Yeah.
So,
do you have any gluten-free things?
We have a whole chapter.
We have a whole chapter, yeah.
Nice.
Really important to not just look at what we wanted to do, but what our customers would want, you know, and what they enjoy and what customer favorites have been. You know, we have hummus cookie, which I came up with, except for the garlic, but it has chickpeas, tahini, lemon, fresh lemon zest and juice, lots of sesame, like it's rolled in sesame seeds to get the texture. So it's really nice. Yeah, so it's fresh chicken.
Awesome.
Yeah, and is that sweet?
It's sweet.
It's a little bit sweet. Yeah, it's got a little bit of organic sugar in there.
It's really like a sesame cookie.
Yeah.
But it's and it got quite a cult following, because it's one of those things where people go, hummus in a cookie.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I've never seen that before, and then it's like, oh yeah, it's really good. And then before you know it, they're like, have you got any of the hummus cookies? It's kind of funny, because what is more than hummus?
Say that again.
What is more vegan than hummus?
Exactly, totally.
Kind of vegan food.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're getting close to the end, so I want to ask you guys a couple questions before we close out. One is, what advice would you give to somebody who wants to open a business? You know, maybe it's let's hope it's a vegan business. And what advice would you give to them? Someone who's thinking about that.
Aggressive self-development. Learn as much as you can. You got to read as many books as you can, listen to as many podcasts as you can, And when I say read, you can also do audiobooks, but you've got to become a sponge for information, because there's so many things to learn. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the show about finance, cash flow, human resources management, things like having a handbook for your employees and all the policies that go in that. And obviously, if you don't know it all, then you've got to go find people that do know it so they can help you, and find people that are better than you to do these things for you, and not be afraid to pay the right people what they need to get the job done, because they'll do it a lot better than you and much faster as well. So it's understanding the value of your time and what you are best, the areas that you excel at. Those are the ones you have to focus on, because that's really what's going to make you happy, because you're going to be doing the things you like to do, and B, bring in the money.
Excellent.
And Ed?
I think Tash summed it up so well, to be honest. It's sort of like do something that you love, first of all, so you're passionate about it. And then, just really, really focus on that, getting out there to as many people as possible, and don't give up. It's not easy. But if it was easy, everyone would be doing it.
Very true.
That's awesome.
Very true.
Thank you.
And then what are you working on at the moment?
So the book, really, getting the book out there, speaking to amazing people like you guys, and just trying to promote it. We really want to bring the book to everyone. Yes, it's a vegan book, plant forward, but it's a really great baking book that is for everyone to use, an intermediate, beginner, intermediate, or advanced baker. And it's a book to be used. Like, it's got some beautiful photography in there, really good recipes that we've tested a lot that will work. Like we spoke before the show, I've read a lot of recipe books, gone to make the recipe, followed it step by step, and then at the end it doesn't turn out quite how it should. Pretty positive that these recipes, we've tested them a lot. We've got staff and friends and people to eat them and give us feedback and adjust. So we're working on sort of pushing that forward, but also within the bakery as well, just being the best employer that we can, producing the best products we can. So when people walk in, they're not like, oh, it's a vegan bakery. It's a really like Hyatt, making the best products we can.
I think we have some ideas on what we're going to work on next after the book, but we've just come to learn, having that pandemic during our first year of business, that you shouldn't plan too far ahead. And with the book coming out, we expect, or we hope, that there will be some interesting opportunities and connections made that might take us in different directions. So we're keeping an open mind on what happens with the cookbook. And from there, we will navigate what's next for BReD. But we will definitely be moving on to something exciting next year. But I can't really reveal what that will be yet, because it depends on how far and wide the book goes, I suppose.
Yeah.
That's great.
Perfect.
Wow.
And where can people find you?
You go for it.
We have a website, edsbred.com. That's edsbred.com. And on the website, you'll be able to find all of our social channels as well. We're most active on Instagram at eds_bred. That's at EDS_BRED.
Perfect.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people have to come, and that's sort of the point, Well, thank you guys so much for coming on the show and sort of sharing your story with us, and the ups and the downs and all that stuff. It was really, really awesome to hear your guys' story and sort of how you got to where you are today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
It was really fun. I
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We should definitely do it again, so we can have an update of your next journey, where you're going and how you're really effecting change in your own community. It'll be so nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye. Okay, so we just had Natasha and Ed from Ed's BReD or just BReD on. What a great, I feel like I learned a lot. I actually think I learned a lot. Unfortunately, for the people who are listening now, I feel like I learned a lot in the after party, in the after show, which you guys are going to have to listen to. But yeah, they talked a lot about sort of their journey and how they kind of built this business, which I thought was really great. And I think they did some really interesting things with that from the very beginning, which is what I think a lot of people don't do, which is like that market research. And they really knew who their customers were. And then they sort of built the business for them. I thought was really cool.
Yeah. No, yeah, I enjoyed them quite a bit too. I thought it was very, very nice. Also, just for them to just take one thing and focus on that. That was also pretty cool, just BReD and just focus on that. And a particular type of BReD and just focus on that. I also, I enjoyed just knowing that they are part of something bigger, but in a way that is not negative. It's not condemning, because I think we follow some of the similar philosophies as well, and I think it's becoming more commonplace to go into a vegan, business or vegan environment, and there's much less negativity, and what is happening is by so doing, and especially when you have good products, it becomes normal for people to actually get those products.
Yeah.
And then it's almost as though it's a quiet way of transforming the world in a way. And I kind of like that. And the more that we have these dialogues, the more I'm realizing that we are quietly just transforming the world. It's becoming normal for the world, and we don't have to fight it or try and force people. Because it's interesting too, because when when veganism was just starting and the products weren't quite as good, jamming it down people's throat was more important. But as the products get much better, we don't need to actually try and convince people because they'll experience and go, oh, wow, this is a great product. Then they'll get it. So I think it's switching, which is awesome, so yeah,
that really is cool. And I'm glad that, we're able to be a part of this in some way, even if it's a small way. But yeah, that was a really good one. And I'm excited to now, get out and start making some bread for myself,
that's so great.
Because they have a recipe that's for, the whole section for gluten-free folks, so that's nice. I like that. So great interview. And we'll see everyone on the next one.
Absolutely. Talk to you all later.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Green Carpet Interviews. We hope you found it informative and inspiring.
This show was brought to you by Veg on the Edge, our vegan restaurant in Santa Cruz and San Luis Obispo. If you're in the area, be sure to stop by and check out our delicious plant-based dishes. Check out vegontheedge.com for more information.
To stay connected with us and learn more about conscious living, follow us on Instagram at Green Carpet Interviews. We love hearing from our listeners and would love to hear your thoughts and feedback.
Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time on Green Carpet Interviews.